Last but never the least, the final panel of this year's summit, moderated by İlkay Demirdağ, Senior Advisor at Sustain Finance, is on a thriving economy starts with a thriving society, climate justice. And our valued panelists are Ahmet Dördüncü, President of UN Global Compact, Türkiye; Dilek Bil, Board Member of IDEM Energy and founder of Purpose Sustainable Ideas; Dişat Tek, Turkey and Middle East Ice Cream Finance Lead, Turkey Head of Finance at Unilever; and Sinan Uzan, founder and president of Tekfen Ventures. Welcome.
I'm missing one of my panelists, so bear with me, please. Evet, geliyor. Great, I think we can kick off. Thank you very much. We've had an amazing day with very fruitful discussions. We've covered sustainable finance, food systems, energy transition, and the last panel of today is going to be touching on the issue of social aspects of sustainability. I can summarize actually the bottom line of our discussion, which will be a triggering discussion. I think a thriving economy only starts with thriving society. So that's going to be the key, bottom line of our panel discussion. And we will be talking about climate justice today. While climate justice is a crucial concept that aims to rectify the unequal distribution of climate change impacts and responsibility. It recognizes that vulnerable and marginalized communities, especially those in low-income countries and historically disadvantaged groups within wealthier nations, suffer, unfortunately, disproportionately from climate change, despite the contributing minimally to the green gas emissions they are causing. Climate justice impacts various individuals, communities, and groups in different ways. So in the first part of the panel, I would like to set a scene and understand, how these different groups are impacted by climate justice. And I would like to start with Ahmet Bey. Welcome. Well, at the halfway point of achieving 2030 targets for Sustainable Development Goals, the world is not on track, according to UN Global Compact and the recently announced Accenture Global Private Sector SDG Stocktake report. Can you summarize private sector's contributions to the SDGs to date and outline a path line for private sector's actions over the next 7 years until 2030?
Thank you very much, first of all, inviting me over here. So I'm very pleased actually to be with you. But again, unfortunately, this is the last session, and I hope that we will be actually not much bothering you and boring you that you are still here. Well, today, the name of the day, the title of the day is Building a Sustainable Future, right? Something like this. Am I right? Resilient, that's a good word. Actually, unfortunately, I was not able to be here from the very beginning, from the morning over here. I'm sure there was actually a lot of really very good speakers and contributions today. And the last two sessions, what I heard over here, it was actually very much positive tones, in respect of the building a resilient future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I will not give you actually a good news, just the contrary. I will give you really very bad news, especially from the private sector point of view. Well, İlkay Hanım's questions. We are actually, the Sustainable Development Goals, the target is 2030. Remember? 2030. Now we are actually at the year almost by the end of the 2023. So it means actually the half of the way is already passed, and we are far away from where we want to be. Far away. So we can count actually numbers of reasons for that. I mean, here, why we are not there. So global crisis, okay? I mean, COVID-19 pandemic. I don't know whether it's good or not, you know. COVID-19 pandemic is actually from the climate point of view, it was a positive sign, actually, if you look at it. You know, the nature has actually revitalized itself during the pandemic. And then the war in Ukraine, the high inflation, and natural disasters. We say that they have actually, those are from my point of view, all excuses, by the way, you know, significantly slowed or reversed the progress on the SDGs. 85%, ladies and gentlemen, 85% of all SDG indicators are off track. And none of the SDGs are on track for achievement of the 2030. So let's be aware of that. Let's be aware of that. I'm talking on behalf of not only as on behalf of the Global Compact, I have also as a private sector some hold. So this is actually, as you have mentioned, this SDG Stockgate report from the UN Global Compact and then Accenture together from the private sector perspective. Actually, this is by the way in his thing, the very first report actually to check ourselves. What are we doing? Where are we? The report assesses the impact of the private sector on the SDGs. The scale is very negative to very positive. Now, listen carefully. According to the report, the private sector's lack of climate action very negatively impacts SDG number 13. While innovation creates viable new pathways, but there are deep problems with credible targets and inadequate progress. The pace of the climate action is not, unfortunately, sufficient to efficiently tackle the climate change, unfortunately. Well, of course, despite some efforts to reduce the carbon intensity, private sector emissions from energy transport, buildings, and agriculture have grown rapidly. Massive new investment, by the way, while doing that, investment in fossil fuel continuously going on. Climate change is now out of control. Who says that? This is Guterres, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Most companies haven't set targets for emissions reduction. Of the minority who have very few have achieved, very minority, significant process. CDP recently examined the emissions targets set by 13,000 companies and determined 2 out of 3 were not credible. I mean, so this is actually just lip reading, you know, that we are saying, okay, we're gonna do that, but, you know, we really seriously doing something? I do have my doubts. There is collective lack of urgency. I mean, all of us, not only private sector, and also the regulators and the social society. We are all talking about that, and we are not doing anything. I mean, look at it as a private person. Are we doing everything that we can do as a private sector? I'm not so sure about that. Well, this is actually a huge gap to private sector and climate action. Well, there are actually some positive developments as well. I mean, to reduce from the private sector, from the innovation point of view, to reduce carbon emissions, remove carbon from the atmosphere, innovation in solar, as it is mentioned, solar panels, wind turbines, carbon capture, storage, and so on and so forth. But still, those are all not enough. Not enough, not enough. Well, I mean, we are talking about electrical cars, you know. It increased from 4% in the year 2020, and then it is by the year 2023 is about 14%. But again, it's also a very arguable subject. You know, the electrical car, to what extent from their carbon footprint point of view and a water footprint point of view, to what extent they are really a good solution for the carbon emissions at all. Well, over 6,000 companies worldwide have committed the SPT. More than half of them have announced their targets. In Turkey, 61 companies have committed, and the numbers keep growing. Companies with science-based targets or commitments represented 34% of the global economy by market capitalization. More than 3/4 of these companies publicly reported progress against targets in some form. However, the progress is slow unless companies accelerate decarbonization. 93% will miss their net zero targets. Urgent greenhouse gas emissions reduction is absolutely necessary. Without cross-sectional cooperation and policy, global temperature rise will likely surpass 1.5% in the coming days.
Amazing.
Sorry to say that. I mean, I don't want you to go home actually with that kind of pessimistic and duster, you know, the horrible type of news. But this is not me actually. This is the Accenture and this is the UN Global Compact. I'm so sorry about that. I cannot be that much positive. But it means actually, well, actually there is a Turkish word. I like very much this Turkish word. Çetin Altan says actually, enseyi karartmayın. I don't know how do you call it in English, but we have to actually commit ourselves, do something. Not tomorrow, not today. Yesterday we had to start. Sorry for making that so long. I'm sorry about that.
This is like a wake-up call. Thank you for the insights, but I think it has been great. Thank you for sharing the insights of the report. As far as I know, it's the first of its kind in terms of tracking the performance of private sector. So I think it's a good snapshot for everybody, all the audience here, to focus on the next steps and really accelerating the pace in terms of achieving the 2030 targets. So thank you very much, Ahmet Bey. Dilşat Hanım, I would like to move on to you, where you're representing Unilever, which is managing both local and global supply chains. And similarly, climate justice issues and disparities may also be raised at supply chain levels as well. For example, SMEs play an important role in supply chains, but often have less financial capacity to manage their own operations, climate and social risks. I would like to understand, what is your observation regarding the impact of climate justice considering the SMEs and supply chains?
Thank you, İlkay, for the question. Maybe I start by how we look at the sustainability journey in Unilever. Obviously, it's an ecosystem. We are a big company. So starting point is that Unilever, we are believing in the power of a purpose-led business. That means brands with purpose grow, companies with purpose last, and people with purpose thrive. And with that belief, our sustainability journey so far has been a commitment to our company purpose, making sustainable living commonplace. And as Unilever, we are reaching more than 190 countries worldwide, and therefore we acknowledge the role we can play to change the global landscape. Globally, we are working with 56,000 suppliers, and it is imperative that whatever transformation we will do for climate justice and tackling climate change, we need to take them on board and do it together. Let me give you a couple of examples how we are taking the global supply chain partners on board on this journey. Globally, we've identified, for example, 300 big suppliers, big in terms of having the highest carbon footprint in our end-to-end value chain. And we are working together with them to actually, I think Ahmet Bey was mentioning that companies should have decarbonization targets. So we are working with those suppliers hand in hand to set them meaningful decarbonization and net zero journey targets and help them develop implementation plans to achieve those targets. We have set up the climate promise. We are inviting our suppliers, our business partners, to set public commitments for decarbonization, for halving their emissions by half by 2030, and publicly sharing their progress, as well as sharing their progress with us. So there are many other initiatives in our supply chain. We are leading from electrical vehicles to using clean electricity in our ice cream cabinets to investing in solar and cleaner energy with our distributors, etc. These are all initiatives that aim to transform the business operations. But of course, when it comes to small and medium enterprises, like you've rightly put it, it's a more difficult journey for them. And particularly when it comes to climate change and climate justice. In Turkey, we are fortunate that actually we are not at the forefront of countries who are having a big negative impact. Of course, we are seeing forest fires. Just this summer, we were having in one part of the country, big floods, and in other parts, forest fires. But we are still at a better place compared to some geographies, as it was also discussed in the previous panel. There, just supporting your business partners, training them, or incentivizing them to transform their operations is not enough. We need to do more to help actually the societies that live in those geographies. So I want to give one example from one of our global initiatives, which we lead as Unilever Ice Cream Business. The program is called Vanilla for Change. It is being run for the past 10 years. It was initiated by Unilever with some of our global partners, like Symrise, a global flavor manufacturer, and German Development Agency. The aim of the program is to sustainably source vanilla while helping the communities that actually produce those vanillas to build a better future. Why is it important, and what does it to do with Unilever? Vanilla is a key ingredient for our ice cream products, as you can imagine. And I think, as most of the room knows here, vanilla is a precious spice, which is not only used in ice cream, but is used in many different sectors, industries, from perfumes to flavors to food. It's an important and surprising fact. 80% of the world's vanilla is being produced only in one country, Madagascar. There's a Sava region where 80% of world's vanilla is coming from. And it's so unfortunate that Madagascar is also one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change. 75% of the population in Madagascar is living below poverty line. On top of these social and economical challenges in the country, they are facing significant climate change challenges. They are seeing rising temperatures. They are seeing record droughts. So it's obvious that such a country cannot be tackling with the climate change on their own. So this program was initiated, as I've said, back in 2013. With the program, in the first 3 years, 3,000 farmers were trained and for better farming practices. And with that, the production of vanilla increased by 20% in the region. And vanilla is also produced only half a year. So for 6 months, there's a lean season where you cannot, if you're a vanilla farmer, you cannot get income because your business is not there. Therefore, these farmers were encouraged and trained to cultivate other types of crops, to buy livestock, to diversify their income. With our partners, as Unilever, we've built rural colleges in the area to train 160 young people every year so that they could actually learn simply reading, literacy, numeracy, finance, farming techniques, so they could actually, for the new generations, there could be an alternative source of income. They were not only dependent on vanilla farming. So all in all, over the past 10 years, this program touched 60,000 people, 10,000 households within about 80 villages. That is part of Unilever's extended vanilla supply chain in Madagascar. So it is actually creating a positive social impact. These farmers are being made sure that they are getting fair price for their crop. They are having access to health insurance. They are having financial support, as needed. So obviously, as big companies, we have our net zero targets, we have our transformation journeys, we incentivize the business partners that we work with, small and medium enterprises, but there are even smaller ones who are even less advantageous, like farmers, very small enterprises, where I think the big players play a big role in terms of supporting. This was just one example I wanted to share because it's an example where a business, while transforming their own business and achieving their own net zero targets, they can also combine that with empowerment of the local communities for building a better future.
It was a great example, by the way. And it shows, profit and purpose can actually be aligned, and you're creating a great social impact with this project while you're securing your supply chain. So it was an amazing example. Thank you for sharing it. Dilek Hanım, I would like to move on to you and really turn the focus on the social aspects and talk in particular about gender. I know you're very, very much involved in gender equality. It's very well known that gender equality and climate justice are inacceptably linked. And can you please address the impact of climate justice on women?
Thank you, İlkay. I would like to thank Sustain Finance and TÜYİD for organizing this summit. And it's been a great and inspiring day, inspiring speakers, inspiring subjects. Some are good news, some are bad news, but we have to take action and we have to work on it. Yes, when it comes to climate crisis and gender issue, unfortunately, climate crisis is not a gender-neutral issue. Women often bear the burden of climate change impacts for various reasons. First is displacement. When climate-induced disasters like hurricanes, droughts, and floods, they lead to population movements, and women always face the challenges in relocating. This is mostly due to the cultural norms, limited resources, or safety concerns. At the end, they often become climate refugees. They struggle to secure shelter for their families. Then there is the issue of resource scarcity. In many societies, women are responsible for taking care of the family, elderly, children, and they're responsible for collecting their water, their food, their fuel. When climate change disrupts access to these resources, it's typically women who bear the burden of it. Economic difficulty is another consequence. Women are mostly engaged in agriculture and other climate-sensitive sectors. When droughts or fires or any other unpredictable weather patterns happen, their crops fail, their livelihoods suffer, and the result is increasing poverty and food insecurity for them, and their families, of course. And there is also unsettling connection between climate change and gender-based violence. Stress and resource scarcity can escalate tensions within households and also in communities, leading to higher risk and violence against women and girls. To tackle climate justice comprehensively, we must recognize and address these gender-specific vulnerabilities. We have to ensure that women have access to equal resources, opportunities, and decision-making processes. And these should be related to climate adaptation and mitigation. If we can achieve this, we not only empower women, but also foster resilience in the face of environmental challenges. This isn't just a matter of women's rights. It's essential for creating a fair, sustainable, and just world for all. All of us we're all in the same boat. Here I want to refer to Aristotle's ship analogy. When he says we're all in the same ship, he speaks about the essence of identity and transformation mirroring our collective pursuit for the good life in today's context. This is a reminder that progress is a shared responsibility. When women and all genders are in, we're all together. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals emphasize gender equality as not just a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. Yet, when women and other marginalized genders, they face systemic discrimination, it's akin to letting the ship's core structure deteriorate while merely replacing its superficial parts. True progress isn't just about advancement, it's about inclusivity and justice. And the opposite, obstructing and marginalizing genders to pursue happiness as they perceive, is a dark vice of crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilek Hanım. Thank you, especially emphasizing the linkage between the resilience and inclusion part. That was very powerful. Thank you for that. Sinan Bey, I would like to carry on with you. Investments made in alignment with climate justice principles can have a profound impact on the value created for society and the environment. You have two hats. You're representing a corporate, Techman Holding, and you're representing the VC arm as well, so you can answer the question in both ways. I would like to understand, how do investment trends change in adaptation to climate justice?
Sure. And, thank you for the question, Yuka, and thanks for everyone who stayed this long. I know it's been a long day, but to add kind of a more positive note, there are major issues happening with climate, and we're all aware of this. Now, how do you get a corporate to really make that commitment and spend the time, energy, and resources to something that is obviously good for society? Now, you have a lot of investors that look towards a buy-in on what stocks they own. Now, that's being driven by a more social initiative and backed by finance. To be able to build this into a corporate strategy, I feel like VC is actually a perfect vehicle to do it. When we look at kind of these macro trends, 80% of global greenhouse gas emissions are driven by four major sectors. That happens to be the four major sectors TechFen is in: construction, manufacturing, ag, and real estate. This accounts for half of global GDP and 2/3 of the world's labor. There are these major movements happening. So we try to bring in technology, try to build those collaborations with the corporate, make money on the investment side, but also try to bring in technology from all around the world to our operations. This corporate culture is not something that, oh, let's see and try. It needs to be a 15, 20-year kind of investment horizon that you actually really have to fold in. A statistic that I don't very much enjoy is that corporate VCs last on average about 4.5, 5 years. Because you don't get that investment return right away. There is cyclicality or ups and downs to a balance sheet that changes kind of corporate viewpoints on VC investment. But this really needs to be looked at as a part of your long-term strategy. As you address these, the issue of climate justice as it pertains to these sectors becomes a secondary, tertiary effect of your investment. I can speak to one investment that we've made. Agriculture is a big part of our portfolio. So when we look at agriculture in general, obviously input side is a big issue for TechFan as a Toros brand. But we look at seed and manufacturing on the farm. All operations eventually need to be digitized and automated to a certain degree, because whether it's construction, ag, or manufacturing, they're all manufacturing. They just happen to be outdoors where variables are continuously changing. One of our investments, Tropic Bio, is a CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing company that focuses on breeding technologies to make plants more resilient to climate pressure, disease, which is a big issue. And they happen to focus on crops that are in the tropics. This is coffee, banana, and rice. When you look at these commodities, over time, their yields have actually been decreasing. So this is a major issue. Half of the world's population by 2050 will live in the tropics. And these commodities are a big part of the livelihood of the people who live there. So being able to introduce something technologically new to build a more resilient kind of foundation for that agriculture is incredibly important for us. Now, where does TechFund come into play? We, with our knowledge of about 56 years, whether it's agriculture or construction, try to impart kind of our R&D capabilities or other functions to those portfolio companies. In this example of Tropic, Turkey happens to be one of the northernmost producing countries of banana. And we have grow houses in Antalya and that region. Now, we use our tissue culture facilities to be able to transport kind of the banana flowers that are grown to UK, to the research center where the company is located. The company gets to have these within a 24-hour period, reducing a lot of research issues that they would otherwise have to source from other parts of the globe. And also, we get to impart our we basically move some of our team there so that they can actually learn and get knowledge that we can later introduce to our own company. So it's a great way to kind of build in more initiatives and then have the company invest more into these new techniques.
Amazing. Thank you. Another great example. Thank you very much for sharing. I think startup ecosystem has an important role in the transformation of the businesses that you mentioned in the 4 sectors eventually. And we're seeing a lot of innovation, technological developments in agri-tech, health tech, biotech, fintech, climate tech. So lots is happening in that area. It's important to integrate that with the corporate business lines, which is something you do already. So thank you for sharing the example. Well, as this is the last panel and end of the day, it's always good to finish with action points and good spirit. So in the second part of the panel, I would like to focus on the action points and the opportunities. And I would like to start with Dilshat Hanım. In the first part, you've given a great example, but I would like to elaborate a little bit more for your global investments. How do you actually integrate climate justice decisions in your investment making decisions?
Sure. So, as Unilever in 2020, we've launched the Climate and Nature Fund. That's a commitment of investing 1 billion euros by 2030 on meaningful climate, nature, and resource efficiency projects. There are 4 key driving principles in terms of assessing which sustainability programs or initiatives we are going to be supporting through this fund. One of them is obviously impact at scale. So we are supporting initiatives, programs that can impact a wide range in industry and can achieve progress in that industry. The second one is power of collaboration. We are valuing partnerships with broad range of organizations that can accelerate and amplify the impact through an ecosystem of collaboration. The third one is about flexibility. We provide flexible financing mechanisms adapted to project needs. And the fourth one is value creation. This fund is not something that we manage separately in the organization by an expert fund manager. It sits at the heart of the business. And it's really supporting our brand's purposeful, sustainable business strategies and projects. So maybe one example I can give on that one, Climate and Nature Fund is this year started to invest in 50 new projects. Knorr brand is leading in agriculture sector. That is focusing on, these projects are focusing on regenerative agriculture practices to ensure that the key raw materials that we use in our Knorr products are sustainably sourced. And the farmers producing those products are achieving better livelihoods. So these projects aim to increase biodiversity, soil health, improve the livelihoods of the societies and communities, as I've mentioned, and also aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and water usage during farming of those products by 30%. So again, it's a comprehensive approach. The fund is actually supporting, where we combine sustainable sourcing of materials, improving agricultural practices, and bringing in regenerative agriculture to the industry, as well as also having a social impact and improving the livelihoods of the local communities. So I think in a nutshell I can say we also, I think it was mentioned in the previous panels earlier in the day, that it's important to have a multi-stakeholder approach. And in Unilever, in all our sustainability journey initiatives, actually, we are making sure that we are bringing the right resources and stakeholders around the table to make sure that the less advantaged groups are also heard at the decision table. And we are bringing the Unilever's reach with the expertise that is coming from the non-governmental organizations. So it's a joint play, and we are trying to work together, leaving no one behind, and to create a resilient, sustainable, and equitable future.
You highlighted the importance of stakeholder management and partnerships, so I would like to take on from there and move on to Ahmet Bey. While partnerships are instrumental in advancing climate justice by bringing together diverse stakeholders, as Dilshat Hanım mentioned, at the same time, UN Global Compact promotes sustainability and responsible business practices, including climate action on a global scale. With your UN Global Compact head, Ahmet Bey, can you please explain how Global Compact serves climate justice?
Well, first of all, let me start actually with your statement, with your words. I like it very much. Let's try to create a little bit good spirit before we leave over here, before we go here in the Istanbul's traffic. Well, actually, what do we do as a global compact? First of all, in order to create a good spirit, I'm sure that there are actually numbers of gentlemen and ladies over here representing very valuable and very esteemed companies. I'm inviting you to be the undersigner of the global compact over here. This is the first step to create a good spirit, İlkay. Well, what the global compact, UN Global Compact is doing actually for that kind of things. Well, to accelerate the things, the actions has to be accelerated. Then in order to increase the contribution of the private sector, and this year, I'm sure you were also there, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, announced moving forward faster initiative, I mean, during the week of the National General Assembly, 2 weeks ago, I guess, right?
Last week.
Yeah. Well, with this initiative, UN Global Compact invites all the member companies, all the undersigners, to make a really very concrete commitments. What are those commitments? Climate change, gender equality, because they are actually really very much important part of the sustainability, living wages, sustainable finance, and water protection. And under the climate change companies will make 2 commitments. I mean, not only undersigning, we are expecting from you guys really fast commitments. What are those commitments? Set corporate science-based net zero emission reduction targets in line with the 1.5 Celsius grade pathway. Aim to halve global emission by 2030. If you are still believing on this, aim to halve global emissions by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. Isn't it a dream? I mean, most probably I won't see that, but my grandson, my kids, hopefully will see that. Well, contribute to a just transition by taking concrete action that address also the social impacts of the climate change mitigation and adaptation measures in partnership with actors such as government, such as workers' unions, communities, NGOs, and so on, all the stakeholders. Well, committed companies will declare progress towards the targets in their annual progress reports to the UN Global Compact. It is not only actually that I'm the member of the UN Global Compact and give away, you have to progress, gentlemen and ladies, regularly. Well, we do actually have also some tools in order to ease that kind of commitments, to ease that kind of reporting to you. Well, we know, for example, most of the companies, they do have really a big problem, a big struggle to set actually their targets, especially science-based targets. I mean, science-based targets, if you don't know where you are, you cannot put for you actually a kind of aim, a target where you want to go. First of all, you have to know where you are. So this is the science-based targets. Technology allows you actually to first of all measure where you are in respect of your carbon emissions, in respect of your carbon footprint, water footprint, and so on. To help companies in this process, we are UN Global Compact, Yuzin is also here, we started, right? The Climate Ambition Accelerator. It is a 6-month program designed to equip companies with the knowledge and skills to set the science-based emission reduction targets aligned with the 1.5 Celsius grad pathway. The participants, I mean, if you are the participant of this program, you will have the access on-demand training, peer-to-peer learning opportunities, capacity building sessions, and the learning from the global best practices. As UN Global Turkey, we have been implementing this program since 2021. More than 75 companies from Turkey have been enrolled in this program. This year, we also launched the Climate Action Peer Learning Group to further encourage experience sharing among companies. I mean, sharing bad experiences as well as the good experiences, learning from each other. The topics are mitigation, adaptation, just transition, and supply chain. Supply chain also, you mentioned that, this is also a very important point. They inspire each other by telling where they have faced difficulties, how they overcome them, and their good practices. At the beginning of your question, you mentioned the importance of partnership in advancing climate justice. Civil society organization and business association have an essential role to play here. As an excellent example that we will actually just recently, a couple of days ago, actually we have signed a very, very example of cooperation between as WWF, Turkey, TÜYID, and UN Global Compact. We will implement an EU project. With this project, we will provide training to 30 business organizations to increase their knowledge, capacity, and advocacy on combating climate change. We believe this will contribute to the impact of civil society organization on the net zero transformation of, hopefully, Turkey. So I thank you very much, İlkay Hanım, for your questions. As you can see, I mean, they have prepared me really very well. I mean, one of those heroes is over there just looking at me. Thank you very much.
It was very comprehensive, as always. Thank you very much. I would like to highlight your point about peer-to-peer learning, because in the first part you emphasized that, there's no time and we're already not performing really well. So no time to reinvent the wheel. We need to really learn from each other and use the power of partnerships, I guess.
This is the good spirit.
This is the good spirit. Exactly. So, okay, Dilek Hanım, in the first part you actually said how important it is to have a diverse economy, inclusion of women and minority groups to have a resilient, society. But how can we make sure, we don't actually leave behind women and children to achieve climate justice?
Thank you, İlkay Hanım. I will, contrary to my first half, I will show the opportunities and I will try to look at it from the lens of gender and talk about some of the exciting opportunities that are ahead of us. And of course, by doing this, we cannot leave anyone behind. Firstly, women can be powerful agents of change in climate action. When they have unique knowledge, skills, and experiences, they can really make a difference. We should also encourage more women to step up as the leaders of environmental and climate-related fields. When women are part of the decision-making and policy discussions, we tend to see more effective and fair solutions, and it's been scientifically proven. Economically, empowering women is another big piece of the puzzle. When women are given access to resources, and when they're given training and jobs in sustainable fields, they become more resilient and they can contribute to solutions. And we've got to make sure our climate policies are gender positive. That means considering and addressing the specific needs and vulnerabilities of women. Education is another important issue, of course. We need to empower women and girls with knowledge about climate change and sustainable practices. When they understand the issues, they can protect their communities. They make informed decisions. Innovation and technology is another game changer. If we develop and adopt tech solutions that benefit women and girls in climate change and in vulnerable areas, we are improving their chances of weathering the storm. Community resilience is vital. We should focus on building climate-resilient communities with a strong emphasis on gender equality, and everyone's voice matters, especially women's. And remember, it's not something we can do alone. Partnerships between governments, NGOs, businesses, and grassroots organizations, we can lead to a more effective and inclusive climate solutions. We also need to keep an eye on progress, systemic monitoring, and an evaluation system that can help us stay on track. This will, of course, keep everyone accountable. Lastly, storytelling is very important. Sharing success stories, and if there are women-led climate projects, can inspire others and push for policy changes, and everyone can benefit from that. Well, when we consider these opportunities, we're not just addressing to climate injustice, we're also creating fairer and more sustainable world for all of us. Thank you, İlkay Hanım.
Thank you, Dilek Hanım. My last question goes to Sinan Bey. Of course, we've talked about a lot, but all this requires big investment and financing amounts to be deployed to these areas. So I really want to touch on, based on the financing side as a closure, and understand, what is the role of investors in the financing of climate justice, and how can investors integrate climate justice into their investment processes?
Sure. I mean, as venture investors, and any investor, everyone looks at an ROI. Now, I'm trying to be realistic here. If you're trying to create climate action through your investment without having any ROI, when you look at it on the macro scale, it's just going to drip feed. It's not really going to create a tide of investment coming in. So you really need to justify the ROI side of an investment. Given the macro trends that I mentioned before, there's a lot of opportunity there. There has been incredible technological advances, whether it's AI, CRISPR, gene editing, robotics, that are coming into the fray that I think are going to really transform these industries that haven't really been invented in almost 100 years. You look at even fertilizers, the commercial introduction of that happened, in World War II, 1940. Now, there hasn't been a big transformative change there. And a lot of these other sectors as well result in, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of mentality. And they are very operationally heavy too. So trying to be able to fold in innovation is difficult. But if you do the ROI side and ensure that a secondary or tertiary effect of that technological company succeeding has a benefit to climate and climate justice, then you kind of set yourself up for the success. You can't get out of bed on just climate justice and then making it without making a business case for it. So I think that, in terms of the eyes of the investor, is the major part. But as you've mentioned before, stakeholder capitalism is here, and I think it's here to stay. Creating a message and a buy-in, other than the financials, into the mission of your company, is incredibly meaningful to investors on a retail side, on an institutional side, on a family office side. People want to be proud of the portfolio they own. And I think, trying to bridge that gap and then having the secondary effects of your investments play out in a meaningful way is, I think, the way to do it.
Well, I just want to highlight that, there's, I think, a misconception about profit and purpose and impact. Sometimes, people think that, when you're doing a good project which creates good impact, you're sacrificing from profits. That's not the case. We've seen really good examples in our panel today. So I think it's very inspiring. I just want to wrap up the panel. It's been a great discussion. Thank you all. Well, climate justice is vital because it addresses the moral duty to protect vulnerable communities and enhances climate action's effectiveness, fairness, and long-term sustainability. It advocates for a more inclusive and equitable approach to tackling the global climate crisis while emphasizing the shared responsibility of all nations and individuals in building a sustainable future. I think Canan Hanım opened the day with a great phrase, which I would like to reuse. She said, actually, the devil is not in the detail, but the devil is in the intentions. So we're all responsible for achieving the climate justice. And please join me thank this distinguished panel and the great discussion.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ağzınıza sağlık Ahmet. Çok teşekkür ederiz. İlkay çok teşekkürler. Şiz Hanım çok teşekkürler. Ağzınıza sağlık. Dilek Hanım çok sağ olun. Dear participants, our esteemed panelists, and our sponsors, on behalf of TÜYİD and Sustain Finance, I would like to express our sincere gratitude for your participation in this year's summit. I myself was particularly impressed by the depth and the breadth of the discussions, starting from the keynote speech to all 5 panels. I have learned a lot, and hopefully it was the same for you too. So we look forward to see you in our summit, Sustainable Investment Summit next year. Hope you had a good day. Thank you so much for your participation again.